Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you work in higher education, you already know the landscape is shifting right under our feet. The days of just slapping a simple letter grade on a transcript at the end of a grueling semester, yeah, those are long gone. Today, universities need a much deeper, more nuanced understanding of how well their students are actually learning. So in this explainer, we're going to look closely at a massive, critical shift happening in institutions right now, the move from traditional grading to data-driven academic performance measurement, or APM.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, moving beyond the final grade. Second, the goals of performance measurement. Third, aligning with learning outcomes. Fourth, the digital assessment advantage. And finally, driving institutional quality. Starting with Section 1, beyond the final grade. It's really time to rethink assessment.
Seriously, ask yourself, do final grades really tell the whole story? I mean, if a student gets a B in a course, what does that actually mean? It doesn't tell a professor where the student struggled, it doesn't show if specific learning outcomes were even met, and it certainly doesn't help the university improve that course for the next semester. We desperately need deeper insights than a simple isolated score.
And that brings us to our core concept, academic performance measurement, or APM. Basically, this is the process of evaluating how effectively students achieve targeted learning outcomes, and we do this using assessment data, analytics, and specific performance indicators. So it isn't just about assigning a number anymore. It's about using objective evidence to actually spot areas for improvement and guide how an institution operates.
Think about traditional assessment for a second. It was heavily siloed. We're talking isolated exam records and endless hours of manual grading that just drained faculty time, all for this relentless focus on a final grade. Well, modern APM flips that script entirely. It relies on centralized data, generates actionable insights right when they're actually needed, and continuously tracks progress rather than crossing your fingers and waiting for a midterm or a final.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that APM isn't just one type of massive test. To get a complete 360-degree view of student achievement, modern institutions use a whole mix of methods. We're talking about online quizzes, practical laboratory assessments, rubric-based evaluations for that much-needed consistency, and of course, continuous formative assessments. By evaluating students from all these different angles, the data becomes incredibly robust and reliable.
Moving on to Section 2, goals of performance measurement. Basically, why we actually track all this data. The objectives here go far beyond just filling out a transcript. When done right, APM acts as a massive support system. Sure, it accurately measures learning outcomes, but it also allows faculty to trigger early interventions, meaning they can actually help a struggling student in week 3 rather than waiting until they crash and burn on a midterm in week 8. Plus, it provides the evidence needed to improve teaching methods and helps academic leaders enhance overall curriculum development.
There's a quote that perfectly captures the philosophy behind this shift. Transform assessment data into actionable insights. That's the whole ballgame right there. It's the difference between staring in the rear view mirror to see what just happened versus using a GPS to navigate exactly where you need to go next. It empowers informed, data-driven decisions at every single level of the university.
Let's move to Section 3, aligning with learning outcomes and how we create an evidence-based culture.
Let's see how this builds into a continuous cycle of improvement. First, you literally map your assessments directly to your learning outcomes. Then, you measure student achievement objectively based on that map. Because everything is connected, you can then clearly identify learning gaps across different groups of students. And finally, you use those results to actually improve your instructional strategies. This outcomes-based framework guarantees that every single test and quiz serves a much larger educational purpose.
And the result of that cycle? You build a culture of evidence-based learning. This alignment is exactly what allows universities to walk away from isolated, meaningless exam results and move toward a panoramic, highly accurate view of educational quality. The big takeaway here? It stops being about simply passing a test and starts being about actual, verifiable learning.
Which brings us to Section 4, the digital assessment advantage, and how to execute this using a platform like Qorrect.
Look, managing this level of data manually, it's virtually impossible. No one has the time for that. That's why modern APM absolutely relies on digital tools. The benefits are immediate and, quite frankly, staggering. Dramatically faster grading, standardized evaluation methods across the board, real-time performance tracking, automated reporting, and the near elimination of manual grading errors.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how a platform like Qorrect solves those major administrative headaches instantly. Automated grading workflows mean faster feedback for the students and way less administrative grunt work for professors. Academic analytics dashboards are the engines that actually drive those early interventions. Intelligent question banks ensure absolute consistency across entire programs, and the built-in learning outcomes mapping provides that objective measurement of course effectiveness we've been talking about. It's all about bringing everything into one centralized environment.
All right, final section, driving institutional quality. Let's talk about accreditation and beyond.
So we all know accreditation bodies don't just take a university's word for it anymore, right? They expect institutions to demonstrate with hard data that students are actually achieving defined learning objectives. Academic performance measurement is exactly what provides that trusted evidence.
Because you're tracking APM daily, you aren't scrambling in a panic when accreditation time rolls around. You naturally align with those rigorous standards every day. You can instantly generate accreditation-ready reports, seamlessly document student achievement, and easily prove institutional accountability to accreditors by maintaining totally transparent records of your continuous quality improvement.
The sheer administrative power here comes from consolidation. By bringing assessment management, learning outcomes tracking, automated grading, analytics, and reporting all together, universities aren't chasing down disconnected files and records anymore. You have one powerful, integrated solution.
So the crucial point is this. Platforms like Qorrect aren't just basic testing software. They deliver a complete ecosystem. And that entire ecosystem is geared directly toward driving continuous institutional improvement. It takes the heavy administrative burden completely off the faculty while giving university leadership the clarity they desperately need.
As the demands of higher education and accreditation just continue to evolve, ask yourself, is your institution still relying on isolated final grades? Or are you ready to embrace digital transformation and build a true culture of evidence-based learning? The tools are out there right now to make academic performance measurement not just a compliance requirement, but a massive strategic advantage. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it provided some clear, actionable insights into the future of educational assessment. Catch you next time.